Now, another widely held public perception, again false perception, was that entry into the Eurozone is a kind of a safe haven. When the Eurozone was created and the years after that, up until the beginning of the crisis, both the public politicians, markets, were telling that for the countries that entered the Eurozone is a kind of an umbrella, safe haven, and that the countries from the south of Europe, Mediterranean countries, have profited a lot because of that when they entered the European Monetary Union. This, of course, has now proved not to be the case. But if you look at for example, the Economist, the title of the Economist from 2006-07 were telling us that we're writing about the Mediterranean tiger economies, as Greece, Portugal, Spain, etc. Celtic tiger, Ireland, and there was in 2007, in spring 2007, there was a front page of the Economist which was saying that Germany, sick man of Europe. So the perception is completely wrong from today's perspective. Everybody, and if you read the ECB report on the first 10 years of the European Monetary Union, in 2008, published in 2008, just before the crisis, it claims that the European Monetary Union proved its success primarily by providing the so-called South, let's call them South European countries so they don't have to name them every time, with the great opportunity to kickstart the high rates of growth, and that these are the countries that have benefited most from the low interest rate that they faced upon entry into the European Monetary Union. So it is very interesting because you have this report, so you look at the first 10 years assessment of the ECB, they basically say something that I think they ate their words like 6 months later when the crisis started. Now if you look at why that was widely held view, if you look at the cumulated GDP growth in the euro area, you see that really the countries on the periphery like Greece, Spain, Ireland were growing much faster than Germany. Germany was growing only 10% cumulatively, while Spain was growing 31, Ireland 49, Greece 37. So without looking at the...
That's not per capita, right?
Pardon?
That's not per capita.
No, these are the cumulative real GDP growth rate. But if you look at the structure of the growth of the GDP, for example, for four largest countries in the Eurozone, then you can see that, yes, Germany was growing very slow, but it was the only country which had a positive contribution of the net exports to the growth. While Spain, that was growing the fastest, was exclusively growing on the basis of the very high internal demand with a negative contribution of the export sector. Italy was not growing at all, basically. It hasn't been growing now for 20 years, it's pretty much flat. But if the people I talked after the crisis started with Joe Ackerman, the head of the Deutsche Bank, and asked him, okay, you were financing all these things. Didn't you have anyone in the analytics department to look at the sustainability of the growth through the simple national accounting, whether this can go on? And he flatly said, well, Boris, this is not how we work. We look until the end of the year. We don't look into the 10-year sustainability of the growth of Greece or Portugal. So, very frank answer, I must say. On the other hand, of course, the inflation rates remained very different. So the cumulative growth of the inflation in these countries, again, peripheral countries had like double the inflation rate growth than the core. So within the monetary union, basically real exchange rates continue to appreciate because of the inflation differential. So that's the important thing to to think that you know, you have a fixed nominal exchange rate, but the real exchange rates continue to move, both if you deflate them by the inflation rate or if you deflate them by the unit labor cost, which also diverged. Now, interest rates, yes, they were much lower for the countries that joined the monetary union from the south than for the core or north. But they were actually negative in the first period of the European monetary union. So it made sense basically for these countries to de-save, to spend rather than to save. If you look at the longer time period, then they are positive for Ireland, Italy, Portugal. Only Greece has a negative because of the highest inflation, but actually are much lower than in the north. So the monetary policy obviously was not suiting well both the north and the south. If you look at the relative unit labor cost, this is the graph which was probably mostly used after the crisis has started. There you see the divergence also in the real exchange rate if you deflate them by the unit labor cost, because you had Germany or Austria where the unit labor costs were declining, and a bunch of the other countries where the unit labor costs were increasing. So Germany had a very low growth of the GDP, but was actually using the sunny period to repair the roof, while the others were having fun under the sun, distributing the wages and having a good party because of the low interest rates. And if you look at the correlation between the unit labor cost and the budget position in this country, this is the unit labor cost, this is the budget deficit or surplus. Finland was the only one which had a cumulative surplus. So, there you can see that there is a clear correlation between the two, which means the higher the budget deficit you had, faster was the increase in the unit labor costs, which probably tells you that the governments were using the very low interest rate environment in which they got in order to run higher budget deficits, borrow and distribute money into the increase in the wages, which was higher than the productivity increases. Except for the countries like Germany or Austria, which were keeping their wage growth below the increase in the productivity. And that has then